Hi everyone, this is Drishti Jain and welcome to the Global Conference of Women on Stage. I'm very excited to be invited to speak at this global conference, and today's topic is going to be very interesting. I'm going to tell you how would you build your own virtual reality applications. How will you become a JavaScript superhero, build your own virtual world, and not just rely on the existing applications out there, but actually explore your imagination, build your own virtual reality world, and see where that takes you. And also share it with the community. To tell you a little about myself, I'm pursuing my master's in computer science at Georgia Tech. So I'm based on in Atlanta at the moment. I have been a software developer with an extensive experience of 4 years or so. I'm also a lot into the machine learning space. I'm a social entrepreneur and an international tech speaker. So I love to share my knowledge across the globe with the different tech communities out there. And that is my passion. Things that I'm doing new, you can follow all the updates about it on my Twitter, and it'll link you to all of my social links as well. I'm also a career coach. I have my own initiative called Skill Up with Drishti. You can feel free to scan the QR code or enter the website manually. That will also show you the different things that I do. I help out people who are transitioning into tech, who want to pursue a career into tech, and also somebody who's just looking for general guidance and to know if they are on the right path to achieve their goals or not. You can visit the website, and that will actually take you to a link to also schedule a time slot in the calendar with me. So you can find out my calendar details, get in touch with me, let's hop on a one-on-one call and let's explore tech together. And as the most interesting part of today, that is virtual reality. So, all of us have seen a lot of virtual reality around us. It started from being into games to now completely immersive virtual worlds, right? From medical students using virtual world to see what does it feel like being in an operation theater, to you trying out your dream car in an F1 racing wearing your favorite VR headset. But when it comes to the aspect of being a developer and especially being a virtual reality developer, is this emoji a representative of your current state? Do you feel that it is complex or it is scary? Worry not. I'm here, and by the end of my talk, you will learn how do you become a VR developer, develop your own games, and also create your own virtual world. So, virtual reality is an artificial environment that is created with software and presented to the user in such a way that the user suspends the real natural belief and accepts it as a real environment. Think of a disco board wherein you're in your VR headset, and it should be so immersive, so intuitive to the user using it that you would forget about your real surroundings around you and actually think that the virtual world is what your actual reality is. That is the power we can achieve with virtual worlds. It can help you transform from one place in the world to any other place in the world in a fraction of seconds. And since the past few years, virtual reality has been a rising trend, and the market is filled with a number of headsets which have their own delightful features. But being a developer, this creates a lot of complexity when you try and build your application supported for one virtual reality headset. But then your audience, you might be losing on your audience who might be using the headset of a different company. That is wherein things that I'll tell you would be very useful. You will be able to bypass the proprietary tools for specific headsets and create virtual reality applications that can be used across devices, across the different wearable headsets of virtual reality that are out there. And in order to do this, first, let's remove the core confusion that a lot of people in the audience today might have. So, when we talk about a different reality as compared to what we are currently in, the first two terms that are there, which tend to create a confusion, is what is virtual reality and what is augmented reality. Now, virtual reality and augmented reality are two completely different things. Firstly, there are two different components. One is the user, and the other is the digital environment or the different objects that you have programmed that are created using using the software that you've built. Now, they are two sides of the same coin, but they're equally opposite, right? So you could think of augmented reality as virtual reality with one foot in the real world. So it is like you have things which do not exist in the real world but present in the real world. That is AR, augmented reality. In case of virtual reality, the user is embedded into an experience which is in a digital environment. For example, when you wear a headset, you get transformed into the virtual world. You, as an entity, become a part of the virtual world's entity. That is virtual reality. Whereas, in case of augmented reality, the digital objects come into your physical real space. For example, you can visualize different objects. You can measure things using your iPhones right now, using the measure feature. In that case, you see the different scales on your real world object. So that scale is a virtual, a digital object which is embedded in the real world. That is an example of AR. And there are tons of AR applications as well being built. For example, in navigation. Right now, any map service that you use, it is difficult for somebody to understand how does a map work. There is a steep learning curve. So in order to combat that, a lot of big tech companies out there are using AR technology in order to make this process easy and reduce the time it takes for somebody to understand using their application. Now, coming to VR, the key factor when developing for VR is all about understanding that the user is going to be a part of it. Virtual reality allows you to take risks, which are virtual risks, in order to gain real world experiences. Say you have a game, you are traversing across landforms, you are seeing mountains, rivers, there are cliffs, and maybe your player would like to jump in it. It is taking virtual risks. So a key factor in developing for VR is pretty similar to normal development. But the key factor is that here you have to keep the user in mind. The user is the center of everything that you are doing. Virtual reality should be a creation of a virtual environment presented to our senses in such a way that when it is experienced by the user, they actually feel that they were there. So it is not just about the way it looks, it is more about the interactions a user is able to have in your virtual environment. If a user plans on jumping, the character of the user in your virtual world should be able to jump. The execution of any kind of motion of the user in a real world should be captured very well in the virtual world. Looking at the different applications of virtual reality, right from the entertainment industry to flight simulations to medical industry to fitness industry. Now there are tons and tons of virtual reality applications. Taking the example of, say, fitness industry, that is a completely newly explored field wherein virtual reality can make a very big impact. Consider a time like the pandemic time wherein you could not leave your houses, but you wanted to be a part of your favorite Zumba class. Now, how could that be achieved? You would go in the virtual world of your Zumba class along with all the friends that you had in your class, do the Zumba class together and have a great time, but right at the comfort of your home. And being a virtual reality application, you were able to immerse yourself in that virtual environment, in that virtual surrounding. It makes the user completely unaware of the real surrounding, but completely aware of the virtual surroundings. The applications of VR are tremendous. You could imagine it in each and everything that you do it in the real world today. And with the onset of the hybrid working culture and the remote working culture, virtual reality applications are on the rise and they would continue to grow. Now, how do you build? How do you become a VR developer? Let me answer that for you. So using A-Frame. A-Frame is a web framework for building virtual reality applications. To read the documentation about A-Frame, the best way is the official website, a-frame.io. A-Frame is a web framework for building virtual reality experiences. The core is a powerful entity component framework which provides a declarative, extensible, as well as compostable structure on 3.js. So A-Frame is not just a 3D scene graph or a markup language. The core is a very, very powerful entity component framework. And this framework is what makes it unique. Also, as I said, that I would tell you building a VR application such that it is independent of the headset that you develop it for. So A-Frame supports most of the VR headsets, and be it from Oculus to Cardboard to Windows Mixed Reality, it can be for everything. So A-Frame, once you develop it in A-Frame, you will be able to use it across devices. And using it across devices means that if you publish it at one of the stores, you'll be able to republish it in multiple stores and grow the audience who uses your product. Now, although A-Frame supports the whole spectrum, A-Frame mainly aims to define fully immersive VR interactive experiences that go beyond the 360 continent, making full use of positional tracking as well as controllers. So now imagine it is very, very easy to use A-Frame. Knowing simple HTML, you will be able to build virtual reality applications in the space called web VR. So how is simple HTML code going to enable you to become a VR developer? Let's see through some code snippets. Now, the best way is that the URL is going a bit out of frame, but you will be able to see it through the notes later on, that the script source, you would just declare the script source of the latest release of A-Frame. And everything of your component in the virtual world lies between the A-scene tags. Now, everything that you use in the body under A-scene tags is what will be rendered. And it is as simple as that. You would not have to install anything. You'll simply create a .html file and include A-Frame in the head of the script tag, as well as use A-scene in the body. Looking at some of the core features of A-Frame. Firstly, it is based on top of HTML. This makes it very easy to read, understand, and reuse. If you have a working knowledge of HTML, which you must have if you even just started with web development or computer science, then A-Frame is something that you should try on. You'll be able to create virtual reality applications. Additionally, it is accessible to everyone, whether you're a web developer or VR enthusiast. Maybe you don't want to do it as a part of your full-time job, but there's some side project that you have been wanting to create, wanting to show the world your creativity. Then A-Frame is the place to be. For artists, for designers, for educators, makers, kids, anyone and everyone can build VR applications. And A-Frame is open source, so you can explore it completely. You do not have to buy some proprietary license in order to build VR applications. Coming to the core component that I've been discussing since a couple of slides of entity component architecture. So entity component architecture, so you can think of HTML to just be the iceberg. Now, developers have access to JavaScript, all capabilities of JavaScript, DOM APIs, 3.js, WebVR, as well as WebGL. Now, this makes it very powerful. You will be able to utilize all the powerful features of it being declarative, compostable, reusable, include features of JavaScript, include features of DOM APIs, 3.js into your VR application. This will enable you to create applications that are not just robust, but also very interactive. So you'll be able to use capabilities from JavaScript as well to work around with your components. You would want your object to act on a certain way when the user interacts with it. So using a lot of inbuilt JavaScript capabilities will help you achieve it in quicker time. Building VR applications for Vive, Thrift, Windows Mixed Reality, and Cardboard with support for all respective controllers. Even if you do not have a headset, there's no need for you to actually spend a lot of money in order to test out your application. You can use it, you can build your application, and once done, you can try it out on your desktop itself, as well as your smartphone, and you'll be able to navigate. So if you would have had a headset, you can just wear it, and if you turn around, you'll be able to explore the whole space. But if you do not have a headset and you want to just try out and see how does it look like, in that case, use your desktop or your mobile phone and you can swipe around in the 360 fashion to explore your complete virtual environment. Isn't it very helpful? You do not have to spend a lot of money in order to become a VR developer or even test out your own VR applications. And one key thing with building VR applications is the performance. The rendering should be very good. It should seem seamless. So in that case, A-Frame is optimized from the ground up for web VR. Any kind of web VR, it is pretty optimized. And while A-Frame uses JOM, the elements don't touch the browser layout engine. So once you run it in your browser, it is pretty good to go. 3D object updates are all done in memory with little garbage and overhead. So all of the objects that you create in a virtual world are going to be 3D. So it is a key point, and A-Frame takes care of it for us, and it runs very smoothly at 19 frames per second, so making it very interactive and very useful for large scale web VR applications as well. Coming to what entity component system is like. So ECS architecture is common and a desirable pattern in 3D as well as game development, and it follows the composition over inheritance and hierarchy principle. The entities are container objects. They are container objects into which different components can be attached. Now, entities are the base of all the objects in the scene. Without components, entities neither do nor render anything. Similar to if you have an empty div tag, it is just as similar to that. And entities are represented by a-entity element and prototype. Talking about components, so these are reusable modules or data containers that can be attached to entities. So components will be attached to entities to provide appearance, behavior, and functionality. And these are represented by the HTML attribute of a-entity. And underneath are objects containing the schema, the lifecycle handlers, and the method, as well as the logic implementation. Third but not the least of the ECS system is system, and it provides the global scope management as well as services for different classes of components. Now systems are represented by a-scene HTML attributes, and it is often optional, but you can use it to make your VR application more modular in order to separate logic and data. Now, why do we have the ECS system when building VR applications? When you're building on a 2D, when you're building a 2D web application, you would lay out elements which would have a fixed behavior and a hierarchy. But as soon as the 2D turns into 3D, you will see that 3D and VR are very different. There are infinite possibilities of things that you can do, and there are a lot of unbound behaviors. If you have a 2D object, you have the end dimensions, but in your VR application, it's a 3D model. It can, for example, if it is a ball, it can be thrown, it can be enlarged, a user could interact with it. So ECS provides a very manageable pattern to construct different types of objects, as well as it promotes a lot of clean design via decoupling, encapsulation, modularization, and reusability. Now let's look at how do you build a simple scene. Just like whenever you would learn a new programming language, the first program you would write on is the hello world. Similarly, in building VR applications, the first program is the hello VR scene. Consider we have to build a VR scenario like this, wherein we have 3 objects on a plane and it's a space around it. In that case, you would include your source in the head. Then in the body, you would position the different objects that you have. Now you'll observe that, for example, for the box, there are 3 coordinates for the positions. That is because we need to consider the X, Y, as well as the Z components. It is a 3D object, so it is being placed in 3D plane. The color is represented and rotation represents the orientation of the object it is kept in. Similarly, I've written it for the sphere, the cylinder, and the plane is the overall plane under all of this. And sky, that is the sky color that I've given. And then I close my a-scene tag. This is the core. The code is as simple as this, how you would write a simple HTML file, and it would create a system like this, wherein you have a box, you have a sphere, you have a cylinder on a plane in a space. Now coming to, in a VR application, a core component is the interactions that you have with it. Now for different interactions, there are a variety of platforms, devices, input methods, which are supported by A-Frame. And there are multiple ways to develop different interactions. Additionally, one of the key interactions is gaze-based interaction. Gaze-based interaction is very, very crucial whenever we are building a VR application. It is mainly for headsets which don't have a controller. For example, you just have the headset. You do not have a joystick in order to control different components there. So it is based on rotation of the head the user is doing and the object the user is focusing on or looking on to interact with. And even with the rotation only controller, the interaction is pretty similar. Now, in order to implement this gaze-based interaction, you would implement the component of the component inside a hyphen scene inside a hyphen camera. So a frame comes with the tag provider which provides the gaze-based interaction if it is attached to the camera, and it is as simple as that. Now, since A-frame is just HTML, we can control the scene and its entities using JavaScript and DOM APIs, as we would mainly in any ordinary web development. Now, with DOM, that is Document Object Model, it is a programming language API for HTML as well as XML documents. And it is helpful in defining the logic or what happens in your VR application and the way it is accessed, the way a user will be able to interact and manipulate it. All of this is covered in the document object model. And with JavaScript, there are a ton of inbuilt functions that you can use, right from get attribute to append child to query selector. And all of this will help you make your VR application more interactive, as well as try and implement the fields that you want it to happen. Now, in all of this, a key thing that you would be imagining is, so this is pretty cool. Once you are able to develop a virtual reality application, you will also be able to see and do things with objects. As a user in a virtual world, a key important part of making it very seamless is to be able to interact with different objects and see how does it actually look like. Just for inspiration, let me show you a few of the open source examples that are out there. These can also be accessed on aframe.io. So here the users are trying to play music using different objects, and each of the shapes is associated with a different tune. So it is like a magical forest. Another is A-Blast, which is pretty interesting. You should give it a try. You can try it even on your desktops and your smartphones. There's no need of having an actual headset. Now, if in this scenario you see the objects have to be gaze-based, the way the user is looking for the objects, that is where in the component that I showed, it is a few lines of code which will help you achieve such an important functionality. And you can include things like keeping a scoreboard, then a leaderboard to display or keep a healthy competition between friends, online players, online communities. And it's just up to your imagination. Use your imagination to the fullest. Create like the virtual world that you want to explore, the virtual world that you would want to try out completely new. So you can do all of that with A-Frame. To share a few of the references, so the best way is aframe.io/docs. It will have all of the latest documentation that is there, the new contributions by the community. A lot of interesting projects are put up by the community, and that is linked through the docs as well. So towards the end, I would just say go ahead, explore your imagination, create VR, and feel free to connect with me. I'm open to collaborations. You can scan this QR code. This would take you to all of my social media links, and you can drop me a message any of the social media platforms that you are active on. So thank you. It was a pleasure speaking about virtual reality and sharing my knowledge of becoming a VR developer on your own. And thank you for having me at this global conference.